This time I'd like to start our study session. First, we have ordinance change the CX district drive-through lanes. We have Andrea Zammit here from the Planning Commission.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Do
Hello.
you want me to just present what the...
Yeah, and you can grab the microphone too if you want.
Like, grab it closer.
Thanks for coming, Andrea. Appreciate it.
Do I have to hold it? Okay, so as we presented through a series of public hearings, we propose to amend the CX district to allow for drive-through facilities per the ordinance that is already written for drive-through facilities within the zoning ordinance to be freely allowed in the CX district with the stipulation that they are an accessory use. We brought up many options that we were going to either have it as a special land use or accessory use, and through our discussions in the planning department, we chose to have it as an accessory use.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Councilman,
have you entertained the option of just doing case by case on something like that, or?
The thought was that it was, no matter what, they would have to meet the requirements for a drive-through, so we would have to review it as a case anyway. So it was, if it met the requirements for the CX district, then we would accept it.
Council Chair.
Councilman Muscat?
This is concerning, first of all, Starbucks, the new Starbucks on Ford Road in John Daly. And
Just concerning the CX district throughout the city, not
Entire
specifically
city.
any,
It's not,
any specific site plan approval of this. It is just for the overall change of the CX language.
because the problem I have is I was at that meeting with when Starbucks wanted to have that, and we had residents that live there that are solely against this thing, and yet it's always ruled in favor of the business and not the residents. And that's concerning me, because a lot of these business owners don't even live in the city. And that bothers me. I mean, I live in that neighborhood, but I don't back up to it. But if you saw where that place is, and you've got homes that are worth probably $1 million or better, you try to sit in your backyard, entertain somebody, and you're listening, I want 2 coffees and 2 donuts and an ice cream. I want to listen to that all night long. But I think we need to start listening to the residents and give them what they want. I mean, they're the burden of the taxpayers.
Madam Chair.
Councilman,
Okay, so the Dairy Queen on Ford Road, is that part of the CX?
Oh, I don't know offhand if the Dairy Queen.
I don't believe
Ford Road
it
by
is.
Gulfview.
in Dearborn Heights?
No, the CX district on Ford Road, and I don't have the map in front of me, is more on the west side by Beach Daily.
Yeah, I'm almost sure it's not a CX district.
There's very few locations within the city that are CX districts.
That one predates all of us, and is, if that was coming up today, I don't think it would get approval. But that was approved. In fact, I looked it up. I talked to Mohammed, and we looked it up. There was a Planning Commission member, I don't even know if anybody up here would remember him, but Sarah Segoyan was his name, and that's when he was the chairman when it was permitted, and you're going back 25, 30 years.
Well, my issue is, again, we're not sure, we're saying like hearsay that it might be or it's not. We need to find out, and the reason why we keep having, there's multiple accidents in that area, and I don't know if, I haven't been following up, I don't know if there's been fatality, but there was almost one not too long ago. So we need to find out, we can't have another drive-through that's going to be the same as Dairy Queen. There's a lot of residents, there's been petitions. When I was walking the neighborhoods, I've talked to a lot of residents in that area. They all have issues with trying to get out of their streets or trying to get into their streets. And there's people parked on Ford Road. It's ridiculous, 15 miles an hour. You get rear-ended.
I guess,
so we need to find out. So I'm not going to favor trying to put multiple businesses as one. We need to go, as Councilman Winston
On an individual
mentioned, we need to break it
basis?
down.
Yeah, I guess we got to be careful. We've got a heavier traffic flow than we've ever had before in the city, and it seems to be causing problems even around the schools. You know, parents dropping and picking up. It's just our city now is overloaded with cars.
Well, the amendment only applies to the CX district, which is in a limited location, and what we are requiring is that the property has to meet the limitations of a drive-through, and there are diagrams and studies shown on how a drive-through should operate, and only a site that would allow that, which the Starbucks people may or may not have proved that. I'm not addressing that.
Understandable. Wait a minute, I want to ask a question.
We're requiring it to meet the standards.
Yeah, is there, what is the boundaries for the CS district, if I could ask that? Is there boundaries like Beach Daily?
There's numerous little chunks.
Is there a
throughout the
map
city.
that we can find somewhere?
The zoning map.
There's one.
Yeah,
There's
the
one
zoning map out in the hallway
in
that's
front of
framed.
the building engineer.
So it's the current zoning, or are you
map,
changing
And I
it?
just checked, excuse me, but the Dairy Queen is C2. There's a map right outside the building department, and it's the current one.
Okay.
And that's general business C2, but that Dairy Queen was grandfathered in because of all the years on that.
Yeah, any existing drive-through that's on the site is grandfathered in. It's just any new property that wants to develop on a CX property, they would be permitted to have a drive-through use as long as it meets the...
Council Chair?
Councilman Abdullah?
I personally am in agreement with this because we do need to have a change. You got properties on Fort Road, commercial properties on Fort Road, and I understand where you come from, Councilman Muscat, but on those particular properties on Fort Road and John Daly, you got 300-foot deep or maybe 200-foot deep lots. So as far as here, with the one on Dairy Queen, I totally agree 100%. That one is a dangerous situation, problem. I mean, it's just a matter of when. I hope not, but it's just a matter of when something's going to happen, because even I myself, many a times driving, and suddenly you see a sudden stop on Fort Road by the Dairy Queen. So that one absolutely is an issue. But as far as stopping, commercial properties from being developed on Fort Road, like for example, specifically, you got the Starbucks, which is a multi-million-dollar operation that is staying within our city, and we want to keep those types of businesses. I mean, it's nice to get any type of business, but whenever you get a national franchise like Starbucks that decides to stay in our area, and they're moving a block down, and they will have, I went and looked at the property. There's plenty, I mean, from my perspective, obviously their perspective is more important probably, but from my perspective, there seems to be plenty of space for them to be able to get in. As far as residents hearing it at the Dairy Queen, absolutely. As a matter of fact, ironically, I happen to have walked into the home right behind them at one point and noticed the situation as far as hearing what they're ordering. Absolutely. But side note to that, whoever the resident is that builds on a property that close, that's a decision they've made in that particular case. So, I know he doesn't love it, but he made the decision to build there in that particular case. Whenever we have national franchises that want to open in our area, we got to entice them to move into our area. We don't want to stop them from moving into our area. I'm sure obviously the Planning Commission takes that all into account. You don't want this type of, and then for any coffee shop specifically, that does, I have a friend of mine that owns multiple Tim Hortons. Any coffee shop that does not have a drive-through will eventually either shut down or just will not do well. I mean, today's society want that drive-through. So yes, we got to take into account the residents' concerns, no doubt about it. But we can't stop something like this from happening.
Councilman Muscat?
I don't want businesses not to come here, but I also have to worry about the residents. Like, I live in that neighborhood. That's going to, drive-throughs push traffic out into those subdivisions. That's what another thing I'm going to worry about. You get cars that are going to be lined up now at John Daly and Ford Road, which at one time was considered one of the highest accident-rated places in the city, and now you're going to put multiple cars trying to turn left out of Starbucks onto John Daly. They're going to start now turning right. They're going to go down Dock State, or they're going to go down Cecile just to get past the traffic, and that's sending cars out into the subdivision, which then you got, in summertime, you got kids playing. and you got all these cars traveling through there. And anytime you start doing that, just ask Allen Park, when they built a business in Allen Park, all of a sudden the crime rate went sky high, okay? Or shot through the roof. But I understand what you're saying about the big businesses. That's my main concern is you know, and then the zoning board, I wanted to bring this up at a later date, but I see all those businesses being built on Ford Road. What are we doing with water? Is there any detention, water detention in there? Which is a different subject than what we're really on. But I've never seen anything, something dug for them to hold water in. And the Dock Stater for years was notorious for flooding, basements flooding. Now we're taking all of that grass out of there. We've got nothing but concrete.
Okay, but they've been switched to commercial zoning. So on that particular subject,
That we need to bring the zoning board in
right.
here.
But with or without the drive-throughs, we have the commercial properties there. It's already a given. It's done. But I want to point out something, Councilman. When Tim Hortons wanted to open on Ford Road in West Dearborn, I remember watching the city council meetings in Dearborn, and you had all kinds of residents that had all kinds of concerns, some obviously very legitimate. And you're going to have, you know, traffic and this thing and that thing. And I've bought coffee many times there, and I've driven by it 8 million times a day. And to me, and that's a much smaller lot, I mind you. That lot is probably no more than 90 or maybe 120 feet deep, whereas these the ones on Ford Road specifically, are about, Mr. Mayor, are they 200 or 300 deep?
I think 300.
I think 300. They might be 300. These are 300 deep. And with the Tim Hortons on Ford Road, the Dairy Queen, 1,000,000%. I can't. Not the place. I can't stand that situation because, again, that's a problem waiting to happen because you got a very short lot. So maybe we could amend it, you know, in terms of, you know, if it's a short lot, maybe we don't allow that. That might be a little different. But when you have the deeper lots, you can't stop economic progress. I'm just a big believer in this because economic progress brings the values of the properties up too. You know, Van Born area, you know, all this new development that we're trying to do on Van Born between us and the city of Taylor, that's going to bring a lot of economic development, and it's going to do nothing but increase the values in those homes down the street. So
I'm not disagreeing.
we got to just open that up.
Okay, Councilman Bazey?
Okay, so I got a question first. Is that going to be a double drive-through, or is it single drive-through?
I am not clear as to what it's
Single.
however many drive-through lots are required per our zoning ordinance within a lot.
Single. So, okay, I understand Dairy Queen is a grandfathered, and every resident in that neighborhood, I have a couple family members that live in that neighborhood. They voiced their concerns. They had people from the city in that neighborhood trying to resolve this issue. It has not been resolved. What happens if we do pass, okay, we're going to have a drive-through in the area, the residents going to have issues, people parking in their streets. You're going to have issues with vehicles parked on Ford Road trying to get in. What is the city going to do then? I mean, right now we know there's an issue at Dairy Queen, and the city has not done anything to resolve that.
I take exception to that. In fact, someone who did a lot of help for us was the commissioner. We've done a lot. Senator Kniezek has helped us out on it. We've met with MDOT, and the problem is it's too small, and they can only have, 6 cars, 7 cars, and it backs up onto Ford Road. That's the particular problem. And my understanding that the Planning Commission looks at the number of vehicles being stacked up.
Yep.
And the other thing is you should be aware of is we cannot give egress and ingress at that location because that is M153 Ford Road. It's a Michigan highway. So the Michigan Department of Transportation has the final approval and will dictate based on traffic patterns and everything else where the ingress and egress is going to lie on that particular location. It is not the city of Dearborn Heights cannot dictate, oh, you're going to enter here, you're going to leave there. It's going to be MDOT themselves, and they'll take into effect the traffic light and everything else.
And our plans are reviewed.
Go ahead.
Our plans are reviewed by our planning consultant and to best engineering practices, and we receive review comments on new proposals for drive-throughs or any other facilities that are professionally reviewed for ingress and egress and other zoning requirements like the stack lanes, like you said. So we would not approve something that didn't have the appropriate stack lanes and.
Right.
Okay, Councilman Constant?
Thank you, and thank you for coming. You know, we have to thank this young lady who's a volunteer instead of having like a zoning administrator or some consultant come in and charge us. And I think we have to have a solid blanket rule so there's not spot zoning. And Ford Road, it's interesting, the other areas of our city don't have houses going right up to the road, like Van Born, for example. And think about that, if we could get any kind of a major franchise on Van Born or even on Warren or something, for any commercial landowner, that having the spaces, the off-street parking, the turnaround, that's always an issue, and there's always a balance. But thank you for coming, and thank you for presenting this.
Councilwoman Hicks Clayton?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I wanted to say, of course, your community wants to be pro-business and business-friendly, and however, I'm going to add this to that. In the Planning Commission, and again, you're all volunteers, so thank you for your service to our community. But I think it's, of course, what we're hearing is it's really important, and it sounds like you will, through your review process, you'll take into consideration, you know, again, the safety issues, the backing up. I mean, that whole Dairy Queen thing is just horrible for safety issues, but also the neighborhoods and how that impacts neighborhoods with the through traffic. We had an accident on Inkster, and I believe it was Ann Arbor Trail a week ago, and the sheer volume of traffic through our sub because they were detoured, and the speeding with children out and things like that. I mean, it's a very real issue, and we're all sworn to look out for the best interests of our residents and their safety. And so I know you'll definitely take that when you're looking at this to make sure you consider how that impact will be when you're approving things or not approving things. Is please remember our residents' safety because they are the ones that live here. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Councilman Wenzel?
Thanks. Can you tell me if there's any entryway on a side street for the Starbucks?
I'm not talking about the specific Starbucks. I'm here to.
I mean, that's just a question that.
That was months ago, Tom, and I
don't you
remember.
try to steer away from that, an entryway or something on the side streets instead of the main road, like Ford Road?
They were proposing, if I recall, to have a curb cut on Ford Road from MDOT, but I don't specifically remember the case because.
Okay, now,
I didn't prepare for it.
did you think about having a minimum distance from the speaker on the drive-through to a residential building, house?
So within our zoning ordinance, there are speaker regulations as far as distances from any adjoining property, and then there's a specific distance from residential properties. And then there's also even a lighting restraint of light pollution on two properties.
In your opinion, do you think that distance is adequate?
I think it's greater than 25 feet.
Yeah.
So I think it's been studied to where it is appropriate.
Yeah. And you take into consideration, like the mayor said, the stacking, the amount of cars that will stack up, or does many people ask you for variances on stacking numbers?
If I recall, we have been asked, but I don't remember what the resolution was on that.
Yeah.
But we do have the ability in certain cases of planning commission rights to do some variances that are minor, like parking counts and stacking, but nothing within unreasonable requests.
Vehicle or two.
And we would take our planning consultant's advice as to what their thoughts were on that.
All right, thank you.
Councilman
Madam Chair,
Constant?
thank you. Again, this is our volunteer. She doesn't represent Starbucks or, maybe we should have Mark Roberts or maybe our city engineer know something about, the issue.
Well, Nick Lamaco, I believe, attends your meetings, and Nick is he's with Wayne Trimp's Impact, and they would make that recommendation in regards. And I know that, I don't remember how many, but Nick had told me that, because stacking was important in light of the Dairy Queen. And it seemed to me, he told me, I think it was 10 or 12 cars could remain the way they had configured it on the property before it even got near the sidewalk. But
Okay, Counsel-
I don't have it in front of me, I haven't read it recently.
Okay, Councilman Muscat?
I just want to say that, I've attended a few of your meetings, and you guys do follow the letter of the law, and I appreciate that, regardless if I may agree with your decision or not. You are following the laws that you guys are, that's given to you. So the next question is, if we have problems, is have the zoning board and talk to the zoning board to see if they can help them resolve some of these issues, because the planning commission is just following the rules. If somebody comes to with a plan, they follow the rules. So I don't see how they can deny people if they follow the rules, and I appreciate that. And I'm sorry if we come across a little harsh on a few things, but you guys do follow the law, and you do a great job.
I just want to echo on
Councilman Wenzel?
Muscat's comment there. They do have to follow the rules, and if an applicant meets all the criteria, they have to award them the permission. Otherwise, it could be a lawsuit. So they are just, they follow the rules, and they have criteria they have to go by.
Okay, Councilwoman Hicks Clayton?
Thank you. Real quick, I know this is not directly related to, but it is related to your proposed amendment. But can you share with us, we're talking about the noise. There isn't written in the ordinance, correct me if I'm wrong, something requiring screening, correct?
There is or is not?
Is.
Screening of?
Like for the noise, like whether it's the
Generally,
bushes or?
There's a 6-foot wall or a 4 to 6 foot wall at the property line from residential to commercial properties.
Something to help with noise. And then the next question, last one I have, because you made me think of it, was the stormwater management aspect, because also Councilman Muscat mentioned this. When you build up so much gray infrastructure, the water has nowhere to go. So what is the plan? Is that built into this as well?
You might want to, Councilwoman, you might want to ask Dan Brooks, because not this council, but a previous council passed a retainage, and Dan can address it,
That'd
but
be
that's
great.
already included in all our analysis.
Very good.
Did they
All
have
of
one
our-
on Ford Road?
Yes.
Yeah.
Whole city.
That all the new buildings are following some sort of.
The one at the corner of Amboy, the one in underground detention. The ones under construction.
What about the ones closer to Inkster Road? Well, they've got the ones.
That's Amboy. He's talking about the
Amboy is going to be the new star, or excuse me, Amboy, yes. The one that John Daly's going to have one put in.
Yep. I don't know, John, you're talking the one.
John Daly and Ford Road is going to be the new Starbucks.
I haven't seen those plans, but they're, yeah.
Okay, so the ones at Amboy all put in some sort of retention?
Yep.
And the one that's under construction now has retention.
Okay, I was going to ask that question later, but thank you.
All of our plans require stormwater management review as a stipulation for plan approval.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're done.
We're done with her, I
Oh,
think.
I
Thank
wanted
you.
to say one more thing. So
Sure.
we're in the process of revising the zoning map in the city. So we're working with Wade Trim to revise the limits of certain districts and to amend it so it meets current use versus the use that it was designed for years ago.
Okay,
And
I'd like to
you've got-
thank you. Oh,
Councilwoman, if you don't mind, just got a question, just thought came to mind. In regards to drive-throughs on a particular, like, let's say a block, or maybe, let's use one block. On one block area, is there a limitation as far as the number of drive-throughs are allowed? Because that could be an issue. If hypothetically on
Similar
one
to the car
block you have,
dealership issue.
Wendy's and McDonald's and, Starbucks, that could be an issue. Is that something that you guys would take into account?
It is not written in the ordinance currently, but it also, that would span different zoning districts, just because the CX district is so cut into it. I'm not sure if it would help. It would have to be an overall zoning amendment versus like an amendment to the CX district.
okay. Councilman Wenzel?
Is there a time restraint on this? Like nothing after 10 p.m. or is there a decibel?
I think the decibel level is what is in the requirements.
It is
so that there
required?
isn't just like an old speaker that is.
Is that something that's been tested in the past, or is it just in the ordinance?
I mean, the ordinances are written by professionals that have studied this, so I would assume that it's.
Do you know if our building department has ever checked it?
No, I do not.
No.
It's interesting, because two examples. Taco Bell at Annapolis and Telegraph, That's 24 hours, I believe. I'm not up early in the morning or late at night, so I wouldn't exactly know, but I think that's 24 hours. I think at Inkster and Ford Road, the hamburger place is 24 hours. Both Starbucks and the roasting plant both close at 10. The other possibility that, I mean, I'm just going to speak out loud, but I think this is going to become an issue on the next renewal, because I periodically have talked to the people at Panera, is Panera, all Paneras have drive-throughs. The one at the Heights Shopping Center does not. And that is a concern with them remaining in the city. So that's something Mr. Stewart, who owns it's going to have to deal with. But most of those places close at 10. It's only when you get into the Taco Bells and
White Castle.
White Castle, yes.
On our plans, we note, they are required to note what their hours of business are for drive-throughs as part of the requirements for a drive-through accessory use.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for coming tonight. We're going to be moving on to our Canfield Ice Arena lease agreement.
Well, what are you throwing on us at the last minute here, Gary? I'm just kidding.
Okay, what's this?
This is Exhibit A,
Which is?
which is basically
Okay.
You were all meeting, everything okay? Everything okay? You guys are meeting? Okay, good. Thank you.
This is the high school.
This is the lease agreement we have in our agenda, or is this different?
This is the attachment.
this is the attachment that's referred to in the lease agreement.
It says the attachments to follow.
Okay.
And this was, we basically just had agreement on this as frankly today, and there are some things that have been raised by Ms. Mackey that would require some further very minor changes, which we think we can work with. And
Can you kind of tell us what the changes would be?
sure. The changes would be, if you look at Exhibit A, I just stand here. If you look at Exhibit A, first page, you can see that there's an area where the arena is. This is a satellite map. Mr. Mackey wants to add, expand to the south of where the current arena is slightly in order to have more space in order to build a bigger building. Okay? And as a result, this drawing that is Exhibit A will need to end up being changed to reflect that. And the description, which follows in Exhibit A, you can see that there are 3 pages of text that say what the changes are with regard to, or what the picture or diagram shows. This would need to be updated slightly as well.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Mackey. Do you agree with this amendment? Are you aware of it, or?
So this is something that we worked on outside to make sure that the building will fit what we want to do. So this
Okay.
is, yes, this is good.
So this is okay?
Yes.
Because I know it's last minute, so I wasn't sure. I want to make sure. Councilman Abdullah?
So, Mr. Mackey, I just want to make sure that Gary just mentioned something about in regards to an extension, a slight extension. Just if you don't mind defining a slight extension. I mean, how many feet are we talking, roughly?
Going roughly 17 feet.
Past the current structure?
Yes.
Okay, and is that going to infringe on, what do you call it, the tennis court there? There's the one lone tennis court there. Is that going to get?
The building will be 11 feet away from the closest fence of the tennis court.
Okay, so there's plenty of time for.
The code is 10 feet.
Okay.
And if I may, when we were discussing this outside, we raised obviously the same issues. Any motion would be contingent on Wade Trim doing the review to make sure that this is indeed going to end up working, that there's not a problem with drainage. And I've already prepared a motion while we were sitting here with regard to that. The other thing that would be a change would be that there would be an addition of a subsection 2.3, which basically has to do with designating parking spaces. What it would say is that lessees shall be allowed to use signs to designate up to 25 parking spaces for lessees' use in the parking lot that is part of the lessee common areas for the arena. The signs and parking spaces so designated shall be subject to lessor's approval. Lessee shall bear all costs associated with the making of these signs and the installation of these signs. Notwithstanding these signs, members of the general public may freely use the designated parking spaces as provided in subsections 2.1 and 2.2 above. And in terms of these changes, it should be noted these changes have been raised based on things that Mr. Mackey had ended up indicating to us that we just recently learned that he felt he needed these things. And so we've tried to work with him with regard to these things. These are not things, including the Exhibit A, that we're just throwing it at you at the last minute. This is kind of the nature. He needs to move quickly. We're trying to accommodate that.
Understand. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Mackey, I was looking through the lease, and am I finding this correct? This says a 12-year lease?
The ice arena is a 15-year lease with 2 options, and the baseball field is a 12-year lease with the city having an option to extend.
For 3 years.
Okay, why didn't we just make them all 15 years to be consistent with each other? Is that what you wanted, as a 12?
I would have gladly accepted if that's something that
you would like
the city would
15?
like to do.
Okay.
Yeah, the only reason
It
I
makes it a
object
little
is,
bit more
as the
confusing.
recreation director, is because it's a total different entity. The building is a standalone. The outside area, we don't know, and as the recreation director, I don't know what the future needs of this community will be. Will we be moving away from baseball, and will soccer then become more prevalent? Because it seems like that's kind of the trend. And so we as a community, if we want to change the land use, well, then you're locking yourself in for 25 years. That's a long time to lock in.
15 or 25?
No, I'm at 12. If you make it the same as the rink,
Right.
it's 15 plus 2 5s. That's 25 years.
Their option.
At their option.
Right.
Okay? So if you mirrored that, then technically you could be giving up that land use option for the next 25 years. And,
Yeah, but-
and you don't know what the needs will be at the time. If in 12 years or 13 years or 12 years, if you decide that there isn't a need, then you can extend the agreement with it. It's working. You have the option to continue it, and you let future councils then decide what the needs are of that community at that time and place.
It just seems to make sense that you give it a straight 15 to everything, because you got one person. Why confuse it by stopping one at 12 and then giving them an option of 5, and at 15 an option of 5? Why not make it all equal?
Well, because it was two different, when we first started this thing, it was strictly an arena.
An arena.
You know, this all came up much late. In fact, we were almost ready to come to City Council with the approval for the arena, and then we quickly switched to from a renovation to new construction. And then, all of a sudden, then the ball diamonds came in as a separate
Yeah,
entity. So we're kind of treating them as a separate, I mean, City Council can do what they want. All I
Right.
can do is recommend
Yep.
as the, person of, recreation, and tell you what I feel is in the city's best interest. If you wish to go a different direction, you, of course, have that option.
I think 15 is...
Yeah, the thing is, I was just there Saturday at the citywide garage sale. Those ball diamonds are horrible. How do you play baseball on gravel? I mean, it's gravel. No pitcher's mound. You try to teach a kid how to pitch off of flat ground. Man's going to improve the baseball diamonds. Regardless if you go to soccer 15 years from now, you're going to have to rip the field up anyway. You're going to have to rip up the gravel to put a soccer field up. You'd rip out the clay parts. No big deal. I think that making those ball diamonds the same as 15 years, to me, makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
It makes complete sense
That's
to me. The
strictly
man
all-
wants to put his money into all of this.
All I will do is I will stand by my recommendation. The City Council can decide.
I would hope you'd listen to our recreation director
But
and
this time,
keep it as it is.
Yeah, I
Let's see.
would also note, and it would be my recommendation not to change it. When we end up negotiating this, we had a give and take. Essentially what you're saying is, we're going to give away 10 extra years without there being any any concession. Meanwhile, we bargained for all of that and went back and forth. It doesn't make any sense, I think, from the city's perspective or from the residents' perspective to end up undoing something after we've already made concessions based on that.
Well,
Madam Chair?
Councilman Abdullah?
I agree with Ken. I mean, this is something that obviously the gentleman, Mr. Mackey, is okay with. So if they're okay with, they've already done the negotiations, they've already agreed to this, it gives us as a city leverage and an option, and the people building it are okay with it. We got to work what's in the best interest of the city. I think I'd be okay with keeping it where, you know, after so many years, then the last 3 years, we leave it as an option.
Well,
It's up to the city.
At this point, it sounds like, I mean, do we want to take a vote here to figure out if we want to, what we want to do on that?
The point is well taken. Like, I mean, the gentleman operating the ice arena said, hey, there's no more demand for ice like there used to be. Who knows? It may, look at bowling alleys. I've had over the last 10 years, all these bowling, it used to be a very popular sport.
Absolutely.
They're all closing. So there's not a big difference between 12 and 15, but who knows what the future trends will be.
If he's going to have a baseball business there for 15 years, he should have the baseball fields for 15 years to go with it. They go hand in hand, is what I'm
But
thinking.
originally, they were not a part of the agreement. Way back when we started, it was not a part of the agreement that we were given the baseball
Understandable.
fields. And they are going to be used, I know they are going to be used by residents too, which is
Mr.
good.
Mackey?
I mean, number one, you're right, they weren't a part of the agreement, but I wasn't investing over $1 million into a facility to enhance the city. So I've given a lot, and I think Mr. Miyake will agree with me that this agreement really favors the city. This is a real big win for the city, putting a lot of money, effort, and time into it. And I mean, it's been a tough 2 years to get to this point. It's been ongoing negotiations, and obviously we finally got somewhere close. I think if a year, 2 or 3 is really going to make a big difference to you guys, I'm going to live with it. But I mean, I'm going to be there at least 15 years. It would really be in our best interest to control those fields for 15 years, since I'm going to put $85,000 into them so that kids in the city can play on those fields.
I agree with that. I have
you know,
what do you think, Councilman?
I agree, because right now, we have, I believe, we have teams from outside the city that are playing on those fields, correct?
Yes.
And for us to get a team out of that field, we have to pay.
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Why are Dearborn Heights teams not have to pay to play, but yet we got other teams from other cities in there? What about the residents' teams? What about, you know, the citizens of the city's teams?
Okay, Councilman Wenzel?
Do you plan on reserving some times on these fields for your own activities that you're involved in, or will they be open to the public all the time?
So what we have worked out is the only organizations that use those baseball fields right now is North Dearborn Baseball League. I'm a part of that league. We haven't used those baseball fields in probably 2 years. If I'm wrong, Mr. Grabo can correct me. So we earmark 2 days a week for any recreation use to North Dearborn Heights Baseball League. And if they needed more days, I would have no issue making sure they get time on those fields.
Okay, Councilwoman Hicks Clayton.
Thank you. My question, and actually I'm glad to see that the ball diamonds are being included, by the way, because I've talked to so many residents with children who say, I'm going to Taylor, I'm going here because of our ball diamonds. And I think that's good. This is a good improvement. Can you expand just for the public what your work will look like? The
baseball fields?
Please. In particular, the south end is, I know the north end, but also the south end. We've talked about that along, you know, the Swapka Park near Richard A. Young.
So for Swapka Park, I've agreed to donate material to make those baseball fields, first of all, safer, playable, and I'll be more than happy to get that started as soon as the city allows me to. Coach Fay, I'm going to let Coach Fay talk a little bit about the improvements we're willing to do on both fields and what they're going to look like when we're done.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So basically what we're addressing is safety needs on those fields as well as improvement to attract outside outside participants to utilize our fields in the city. So right off the get-go, the fields need to be graded so they're level, so they're safe. There's considerable dips that go into the field that can obviously cause injury. On any type of field that has fencing, there's capping that goes on top of the fences to make it safe. On those fields currently, some part of the fencing is covered, some isn't. That needs to be done. Dugouts to each field so that the participants are protected. We will create larger dugouts on the larger field over at Canfield and also expand the dugouts on the smaller field. We're also going to put fenced-in bullpens so where pitchers have a safe area to warm up. Currently on the fields right now, along any fencing or walls on a baseball diamond, you would have what we would consider a warning track. So it's a transfer between sod to a material, whether it's clay, dirt, gravel, to the fence, so the participants playing know that they're coming up to an object to protect themselves. The fields currently do not have that, so we will put those in around both fields to make them safer, and we're also in the process of looking at an irrigation system, because on the larger diamond, like Councilman Muscat said, we're looking to add sod for an infield, so it's actually a baseball field. And that way, our local high schools can also utilize these fields, because the improvements that we're going to make at those fields will make those fields better than are currently at the high schools, and hopefully it'll draw more kids to the game of baseball in this area.
Thank you.
What's your plans specifically for the south end fields? Just dirt?
No, actually, Mr. Mackey and I are considering doing both, but based on their dimensions over there, we have to see what we're able to do and dive into that a little bit further. But our goal, ultimately, over the next few years, while we're in the arena or the Canfield project, is to upgrade the fields so there's similarity at every field that we have here in Dearborn Heights. Our goal, because right now the city of Dearborn Heights is struggling tremendously in the game of baseball. The sport is a passion of mine and Mr. Mackey's. Mr. Mackey's been involved in this community with the North Dearborn Heights Baseball League for some time, and to understand where the North Dearborn Heights Baseball League is located, and that Crestwood High School had 10 kids try out for their varsity team last year and 9 for their JV, is disturbing to me. So our goal is actually to use our resources to make Dearborn Heights an area that people from all over the state want to come and play and venture into our city, so that we can bring in more revenue while they're using the facilities that we're going to upgrade.
Do you plan on catering to the younger crowd to start getting them interested in baseball at a younger age instead of maybe soccer or something, or do you have a plan for that?
I mean, absolutely. We want to create avenues for our community, really just to participate in athletics. Whether it's soccer, whether it's baseball, whether it's softball, just being active is a huge need in our community, especially with the lack of physical education programs that we have in the district. So we want to create more opportunities for our students in this area so that they have options, right? I mean, so it's creating programming through what we're going to do so they have activities that they can do, but getting to the youth is very important. Giving them another option, whether they have football, whether they have soccer, whether they have tennis. The more options we can give our youth is the best thing that we can do, I think.
Amen. Thanks.
I have a question for Mr. Miyake. Sure. I'm reading the contract, and it looks like that they are to start paying rent right away as soon as the lease begins. Is that true?
That is correct, subject to an abatement.
Yeah, there's an abatement included.
So while they're building it, they're going to be paying rent on a building that is not finished. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Because it makes sense to me. Why don't we start the rent to begin at the CFO approval? Why would we charge them ahead of time? They're already putting a lot of money out in regards to building the building.
Well, Council Chair, we negotiated all of these different items. I find it very disturbing that we are now revisiting things that we spent a great deal of time negotiating.
Well, this is why we have this study session, because we all had questions in regards to this, and we didn't know where to take them publicly. We have to have it at an open meeting. We can't be in violation of the Closed Meeting Act.
Well, you're...
We don't have a problem with that. It's just that we sat down in good faith with them. We came up with an agreement. There was give and take. I would strongly suggest you approve this because both parties are in agreement.
Yeah, and the difficulty in this situation is that now, we're hearing that baseball has been a problematic sport, but now we're talking about potentially extending the term of the lease, which we've already ended up negotiating, and Mr. Mackey is correct. I mean, when I negotiate an agreement, when Mr. Greibel negotiates an agreement, we are looking out for, and I think we are very diligent about making sure that the city's interests are protected. That is what we did with regard to this
Right.
agreement.
But
With respect to some of the things that were stated, I'm happy to hear that Mr. Mackey, who's done a lot in the community, is looking at doing things throughout the city, but none of that is included within this agreement, and none of it is a contractual obligation. If he does it, I think it's a wonderful thing, but it's not something that's in the agreement per se.
Councilman Muscat?
If both parties are agreed to what we have here today, I don't want to carry this on any further. We've already lost a summer season of training and whatever else Mr. Mackey and Elite Sports wants to do. And as much as I'd like to see him, or Elite Sports, not him, Elite Sports get what they really pushing for, I want them to get this contract resolved. They got to start building. I mean,
Right, I know, I
we got to get them going. They're also going to be making some money, and they're losing money just sitting there on their duff. So it's no different than having a franchise business come in and wanting a drive-through. Okay, so we got to help them out with whatever we can, and I want to get this done. I don't want to go back to negotiating it.
Well, we can make the changes right now, Ray, and still vote on it. That is possible.
Except that if the administration doesn't agree, you could just pass it and get it over with. Both parties agree.
And moreover, the
I'm not
difficulty
hearing
is
that.
that you might end up having different portions of it which have all been looked at and have ended up being hammered out with certain overlap with regard to all of this.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Councilman Abdullah?
I'd also like to point out that at one point, this particular proposal, we had it originally where somebody was going to be leasing Canfield Center, and then Mr. Mackey decided, which I think is a great idea, and I thank him for that, to tear it down and rebuild it. But the initial proposal was to lease it out. With that being the case, when somebody leases it out, you know, on commercial property, sometimes you do 1 month or maybe 2 months without rent, but then the rent starts right away. So in this particular case, if you take the amount of money that he's investing and then you subtract the abatement, the tax abatements that we are giving, excluding the work that you're going to be doing on the baseball fields, which is I think $85,000 per the contract, as I recall, you know, it comes out to roughly around $8,700 a month that we're charging him, and that includes what he's paying out. If you take everything that he's paying out to build it and the amount of rent that he's going to pay, subtracting the abatement, it comes out to roughly around $8,700 a month. So I think the city's going to gain from this, but I also think it's a pretty good deal for Mr. Mackey. So honestly, to wait for a building to finish without rent would not be in the best interest of the city, in my opinion.
Well, we've waited this long without any rent.
May I respond,
Trying to get
please?
a contract. Go ahead.
Councilman Abdullah, you supported a lease that was going to pay the city $24,000 a year. And you stood here firmly, and you did that. With my proposal, the city will still get over $55,000 a year. Not only will they get $55,000 a year, they'll get newer ballparks in the whole city. I stand here time after time. I feel like you negotiated this deal, not Mr. Miyake. And that's how I feel. And you know what, Councilman Abdullah? The renovation of the old Canfield Lights Arena that should have been demoed a long time ago, the city had agreed to give me 2 months without paying rent. So now I'm putting up $1 million building for the city. I'm getting zero money in rents, but you are very happy to accept $24,000 a year lease. So I don't know how good of a deal it is for me, Mr. Abdullah.
No, I honestly, it is a pretty good deal, Mr. Mackey.
Yeah.
True. Mr. Mackey?
Yes.
Is there anything else in this that you feel that, I mean, do you feel that you should pay the rent right off the bat, or should you get it at the CFO?
Oh, my God.
I mean, I'm just trying to get your feeling, because they claim that that's your feeling.
I honestly feel that other proposals that came here before with less money, and you're allowing 6 months to renovate. I'm putting a brand new structure.
We did.
I'm asking for no rent until the structure is up and I have a certificate of occupancy. I've already spent tens of thousands of dollars on this project. I've wasted 2 years. 2 years. And guess what? The city hasn't made this easy. It's made it very tough. You're not inviting people to work in your city. You're making it hard. Okay? It's not fun. I won't give up. I won't give up because I owe it to the kids in the city. All right? I have another deal in another city. It's 3 months. It's ready to go. Okay? You guys have made this almost impossible. There's things you don't even care about that you bring up now. I don't understand it. We have a lot of issues in the city that need to be fixed. Okay? You need to stop doing things because you favor people. You need to stop doing things to let people get for free. Okay? You need to stand up and do what's right by your residents. And I've been sitting here a long time and watching this stuff happen over and over and over and over again. I'm not Elite Sports right now. I'm Mike Mackey. My address 6430 in North Martha. I'm going to talk as a resident. Okay? I'm sick and tired of this. Bathrooms not open when kids got to use them when they're playing sports. Other sports teams from other cities using our fields for free. When I call from Dearborn Heights, I have to pay. Okay? I'm tired of it. All right? And I'm not going to give up, and this is going to happen, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to happen.
Okay, at this point, did any Councilman Muscat, did you?
I think Mr. Miyake
Well,
needs...
I'm asking the councilman.
Look, we could have entertained the whole question of the rent abatement complete through the C of O. But this was not raised in terms of negotiations. I have a, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is what we had an agreement on, Mr. Mackey.
The original contract we agreed to, I suggested only 2 months, but that's what Councilman Abdullah wanted. Since he's been negotiating the deal, why don't we have him say that?
No, Councilman Abdallah has not
First of all, I've not been negotiating the whole deal. I'm looking out for the residents, and that's my job.
If you're looking out for the residents, you want to took $24,000 instead of $80,000 a year.
Yeah, but this is overall what had been agreed to.
Well, if you don't have a problem with it, let's just agree to 15 years in the rent at C of O and get on with that.
I do too. Do you concur?
I would not recommend it. I think it's inconsistent with what was already negotiated.
Well, it's not being consistent with what was offered to others. Okay, at this point, let's move on.
Am I a resident? Can I talk? Because Mr. Mackey can talk. As a
Point of order.
Well, the order was
At this
broken
time,
when
we are going to stop the study session and
give
take
away
a 10-minute
more
break
my resident
before...
money. You're giving away
Point of order.
You're giving away city
Point of order.
Sit down, please.
Council Chair, Council Chair, everyone is entitled to voice their opinion, number one, as a resident. Okay, that's one. I will give that to whoever I didn't...
And I don't have a problem as long as they come up calmly.
But the fact of the matter is we have waited for this for a long time. And if the man doesn't pay rent for 2 months to put up a building, what are you losing, $16,000? Okay?
And the money.
And it's not a big deal when you're going to get a lot more in return. Hell, we were getting $15,000 a year for a property that we weren't even getting the $15,000 a year.
That's true.
For a year. A year, and we weren't even getting it. And I've got emails at home that stated we were happy with the tenants we were having and they weren't paying the rent.
I have those emails
So for 2 stinking months while a building is being built for a C of O, to wait for a C of O, is not out of the question. Well, he's putting in his own money. He's not getting our money.
Right, I got no problem with that,
money.
but it's going to take more than 2 months to build a property.
How long is it going to take to put that building up?
A year, doesn't matter.
Last week I got the keys to enter the building. I got an asbestos report. That was the first thing I needed to do. Now I need to get the utilities cut off if I get a lease, okay? And after that, my demolition is set for September 4th. Steel is 12 weeks away, okay? The price of steel has went up 8%, and the rush for orders before the end of the year is 12 weeks away. During that time, we'll demo the building, I'll get the foundation and the footings ready. okay? So, yeah, this building's probably not gonna go up complete till January.
So in other words, if we wait to negotiate, we're still not going to get any rent because they're going to be in the negotiations. So let him have what he needs to have, get it approved, and carry on. That way, in January, we're ready for business because we're not going to go get any rent if we go into negotiations, and that's more time lost. Okay.
You know what? I wasn't going to bring this up, but I appreciate Ms. Laszlo coming up here and voicing her opinion. I'll give you my phone number. You can call me. We can discuss it. But you know what? You want to talk about city money? Let me start. Number one.
We're not going to bang him.
Hey, point of order. Sit down. He's got the floor.
What, you didn't let me have.
I will let you have it if you're calm
You know
when
what?
you come up,
I'm gonna
but not yet.
After he yells at Dave Abdullah.
You know what, Ms. Laszlo, I'm going to respect myself. I'm not going to act like you. We'll talk about this later.
Or talk about me on Facebook, because you're good at that.
I never did.
Oh, you always.
Sure.
All right, point of order, guys, point of order.
Go to my Facebook and see if I ever posted
Councilwoman
one time.
Hicks Clayton.
All right.
Go ahead. Go wherever you want.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hold on. Don't worry.
Okay, so...
Councilwoman Hicks Clayton?
Okay, so I'm going to agree with Councilman Muscat. If a resident has something they want to add, they should be able to. That's provided by procedure.
It will
But it
be.
needs to be done in an orderly fashion. And when the council
Okay.
chair gavels down and says you need to stop, you need to stop, or the next
Yes.
step of the procedure is you should be asked to leave. I don't care who you are. That includes council members. So, excuse me.
Excuse me,
That is what I
please.
said.
Point of order.
Okay, but I want to add, my big thing with this, from what I hear from residents, because I work for you, is we have a condemned building that has been condemned, sitting empty. We had students in there, and they shouldn't have been, and I think that's real. I'm not blaming any of the school members, by the way. I want to stress that, okay? I'm just saying, when I think about those students there, my heart sank, thinking that there was only, from my understanding, was one way in and out of that building. God forbid. This person has come to us, Mr. Mackey, who I do believe truly cares about our community and our kids and wants to make a difference and do something. If we're talking about a few months lease payment, what he is investing, we call that a return on investment, folks. Getting the job done, getting that building open, getting programs for our students, including, by the way, Crestwood School. You guys should have sat in the front because I'm looking at you. But you know what? It's about for our students and our youth, right? And I think he's going to do that. I believe him. I know he will. Let's just get this done and work this out tonight.
Okay.
All right.
You're welcome to come up and speak.
Yes, I will.
Podium.
Chrissy Laszlo on Charlesworth. I have a question for council and maybe corporation council. Does this affect Hype, who was ready to come in months and months and months ago, who also bid on this project, or not?
No, we have the ability to change the proposals.
All right, all right. I wonder how he would feel about that. Thank you, because I know we're...
Okay, no.
Mr. Miyake, did you say you can change the proposals?
No, I said we could end up changing based on in the negotiations, and that's what we did.
I just want to be clear with what Ms. Laszlo answered you, and how did you respond?
If we couldn't, then you couldn't do what you're doing here today, right?
Okay. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Thank you.
It could end up being changed, and it was negotiated accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay. It's public comment.
Zuhair Abdelhaq, 354 Rosemary. I have a little conversation with specific council member concerning this project. I asked him, if you have a property and you have a manager who didn't take care of it, and all of a sudden, after a few years, it's condemned, what would you do to that manager? His answer was, I'll fire him. I encourage you to fire the people who let that building condemned and no CFO for 10 months and no rent for 10 months. And our kids could have died inside it unless, our fire department came and saved the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please come up and speak your name, address, and limit it to 2 minutes. Please step up, sir.
Very good night, everybody. My name is Munib Baidoun, living in Hubble Street, 5630, behind English Garden. I have 7 years in the street, 7 years in a lot of tragedy, in the what is a lot of winter in any time. Have winter is big lake in the street. Before 3 months, have a problem in the drain. I call for a city. One guy, the city come, he got a metal in the drain. Okay. Thank you for mayor for the city. The day is fixing the crack the cement. But the problem the day is fixing.
Right. The comments
crack
at
the
this
cement.
The comments
that's
at
the problem. No the crack the cement.
The comments at this time are for Canfield Arena. We do have a time at the end of our city council meeting.
I have a picture here.
You can come at. We'll call you up. The next meeting we have at the end where you can come and speak. We will listen to you then.
Was every last time I lost 3 cars. My car lost 3 cars. What's the problem? I need fixing this
Sir,
for everybody, not for me.
This is for Canfield Arena only.
This is for
That's the 8 o'clock meeting.
That's for the 8 o'clock meeting. Right after the 8 o'clock meeting, you can be heard on that.
Yes, and we will let, okay.
Hang on.
Have a good night.
Anyone else like to, okay, at this time, we're going to end the study.
See, what are we going to do about we got to have an amendment to the lease now. Because it's not in the lease if we want to give them the rent-free till the building is built.
We have to do that with the minutes, when we, at the 8 o'clock meeting. We can't do it this one.
No. So by the motion, I imagine when the motion's made, Madam Chair.
Yes, we have to discuss it when the agenda item comes up, right, not now.
And then through the motion. I was going to say.
We can discuss it now, we can't vote on it now.
Right, that's
I just don't want this to go on and on and on and on.
Okay, well, at this time, let's just stop the, we're done with the study session, take a 10-minute recess, and we'll be back for our regular meeting.